couple of weeks ago, I sat down with Pedro Echavarría of Permagino Coffees out of Medellin, Colombia. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe. Maybe it was a couple of months. Time just feels so different now, right? Pedro is at the helm of a family-owned business that is vertically integrated. They own coffee farms. They are coffee roasters. They have cafes in Medellin, and they also export green coffee internationally. I met Pedro a long time ago in one of the most strangest ways, which we go into some detail about in the podcast. And serendipitously, we struck up a great relationship, and he has some amazing coffees. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first few to bring his coffees into America, and we've been purchasing from him ever since. This is a two-part podcast, and we will release it in order of the coffees that we have purchased from him. We are currently roasting a coffee from producer Renato Pera, and it is awesome. I mean, all our staff gathered around to taste this coffee and were excited, very excited to be drinking it and getting it out to our customers. So, without me carrying on for too much longer, of course, it is time to get into this two-part podcast. Part one, coming up just around the corner. Thanks for buying this coffee. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon. You want to quickly just start off by telling us your name and the company you work with?
So my name is Pedro Echavarría, and I work with Permagino Coffee. I guess we could call ourselves coffee exporters, although we are a little bit in roasting and farming too. So Permagino Coffee.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we caught up a little bit off camera, but let's do it on camera. First of all, how are you? How's your family? Is everyone safe?
Obviously, I think the situation here is pretty much the same that everybody has kind of lived through the past months with the initial big scare in March and April. Although at that time our the infection rate wasn't that high, but we still kind of locked down. But yeah, everything has been complicated, but at least for us, everybody's been safe and sound, family healthy, everybody in the company healthy. We've actually had a couple of positive cases in the company, but they've all been very mild cases, no complications so far. It's been scary times, but everybody's kind of pulling through, and things are slowly going back to a new normal. But
right. Sorry, did you say you've had some people in your company get?
Yeah.
Or within your family? Sorry.
No, the company. We've had a couple of members of our team positive. But yeah, all of them really mild symptoms. Actually, two of them were completely asymptomatic. They just had to be tested because one of them, their girlfriend, was positive and had to get tested. And the other one doesn't really know how he got it, but he had to get tested through routine and got positive asymptomatic. But yeah, the other two were very mild symptoms, headache, kind of mild flu symptoms. But we've been kind of lucky in that sense because our shops are open, and we got our baristas working behind the bar and people coming through. So it was one of the scary things at first going back to opening, but we've managed to keep protocols in line, and things have worked out so far.
Really? Yeah. Was there exposure to the rest of your staff? Like, did you have to do a quarantine shutdown or?
No. So, I mean, we both of them were basically, one of them that developed symptoms, and we'll have a protocol that is obviously if anybody has any sort of mild symptom, they'll stay away, and we'll evaluate him or her from home. And we have a doctor that is helping us even before this with all our kind of health in the workspace policies, because that's been starting to become a big thing here too, and we've been working on that for the past 2 years, even before COVID. So we have a good team in-house that helps us with kind of managing this, and we have a doctor that doesn't work for us but works for a company that helps us. So he's monitoring all the cases and making sure that we know when to quarantine people, when it's not necessary. And we've been, operational wise, it's been complicated because we have had to quarantine and test people that have been in contact with the people that turned positive, and that's just at a cafe or at our e-commerce little distribution center or at our mill. Becomes really complicated really quickly because it's just 5 or 10 people at every part, and just you have half of them away, and it's impossible to fulfill orders or get stuff done. But
yeah, I mean that's really scary. If we had a staff member come down with it as well, and thankfully for him, his symptoms were pretty mild, but he was feeling it in the chest, and he went and got tested, came back positive, but he'd been longer than 3 days away from our company. So thankfully, no one in our business had been exposed. Otherwise, we'd have to follow the guidelines, and we'd all have to self-quarantine for 14 days. And,
it's now actually here in Colombia. It's 10 days now. They
right.
brought it down to 10 days, and I think obviously the right, the scientific amount is 14 days, but I think they've come down to the conclusion that in the next 10 days, the possibility after those 10 days of contagion is very, very small. So people are normally here go back to normal after 10 days of developing those symptoms. So it helps a little bit, but still 10 days with somebody
gone.
Gone. So
and so and well, that's you on the local level. How did the Colombian government handle the pandemic at large?
We can stay here for a long time debating, the pros and cons of the different policies. And I think, at the beginning, we definitely went really hard, really quickly, which made, everybody was scared then. Everybody was willing to do that then, to go into lockdown. There was a lot of, I guess, political capital for the government to really kind of go down and take care of it. And everybody was worried about. But at that time, the virus was actually really small in Colombia. And we took long was to close our borders, because it would have been a lot easier to close them a lot earlier and not have to do that sort of strong lockdown than the other way around. But now, I mean, the government really doesn't have the possibility that American or European countries or governments can have of having these very generous furloughs policies, the fiscal stimulus, everything that the more developed nations are doing is very hard here because there's just no budget for it. So it's really basically anybody that gets fired here. When you fire somebody here, you have to pay a certain amount of money to fire them in order, depending on how long they've been with your company. So that's kind of an insurance that a worker will have. But it's usually a couple of months of salary. The government does not provide any sort of subsidy for people that are out of work. So economy-wise, it's really hard to go back into lockdown because there's just too many people losing their jobs that won't have any other access to income. So I think we went a little too hard too early, and now when we actually afterwards, when the virus actually started growing and the lockdown would have helped, there was no way of getting everybody back into indoors and kind of out of the street. So but the health services have been improving a lot. There've been a lot of investment, both private and public. Hospital capacity has increased quite a bit in the last 6 or 7 months. So I mean, the government has done as good as a job as they probably could, taking it seriously and making sure that they're doing everything that's in their power to do it. And it's not become a political, issue like it's been in the US with, masks or freedom or et cetera. It's a very practical issue here. It's either we can do it or we can't, but it's not really a political issue.
Yeah. Oh man, we'd wish for a non-political COVID response here. I think you guys have followed a similar pattern. We just can't.
I'm gonna switch here because I'm getting the sun in kind of my face, so I'm just gonna switch here. Hopefully, you can see me.
No worries. That's great. So we've got some good shadow, nice mood like shadow.
If it's too dark, you can change it as well.
No, stay there.
But yeah.
Doesn't matter. Wherever you're comfortable.
But yeah, no, things are improving, and again, things are going back to normal, and hopefully we can kind of move past this. But it's still a couple months out. The good thing is that at farm levels, the towns where we work throughout Colombia, everything has been pretty mild. I was just in Urrao and Caicedo, which are two municipalities where we work, in last week, and things have been pretty mild there. The main issue for us also with our allied producer program and exporting and sourcing coffee throughout Colombia is that we haven't been able to travel for the past 8 months, which has been very weird. Although my wife is loving me right now because I've been at home and not traveling for 8 months. But yeah, we travel a lot throughout the harvest, and visiting producers, cupping at sourcing and selecting lots, and we've been able to do all of that pretty much the same from our main warehouse in Medellin. But still, the building of relationships, the communications, everything gets a little harder when you can't visit. But
yeah. Well, let's dive into that. Let's dive into your business and your family's business. I mean, when I first met you, I was in Colombia for a few weeks, and you graciously
and you lost your passport.
Well, technically, I didn't lose it.
You didn't have a visa. The visa for Brazil, and then you had to send it to the embassy.
Yeah.
But then without a passport, you couldn't fly from. I
remember.
A long bus. That was a funny story.
It was a nightmare. I mean, I've alluded to this in other vlogs or podcasts. I don't know what to call this, but any and all mistakes that can be made whilst traveling, I've definitely done that. And I was supposed to go to Colombia and was only there for 10 days or something, and then I was supposed to go to Brazil for another 10 days. Got to Colombia and realized, oh shit, I forgot to get a visa for Brazil. And I'd been there before. It wasn't my first rodeo to Brazil. Yeah. And anyway, how I didn't lose my job at that time, I have no idea. They must have liked me at that point. But what I was alluding to is what struck me about you, and this was going back, probably 2012?
Yeah, this was probably 2012, 2013.
Something around there. And what struck me was, one, how young you were. And
well, not as much anymore. I have gray hair on.
Right. That'll, having your own business will do that to you. Yeah. And I was really impressed. You've always impressed me. So, for people who are just meeting you for the first time, like your business is vertically integrated. You're out of Medellin. Talk us through it.
Yeah. So a little bit of kind of our story is, we're a family-owned and family-run business. My father started the business 40 years ago, growing coffee near Medellin, in Santa Barbara and in Amaca. He had a full-time job in the city, but coffee was always his passion. And back then, growing coffee was actually pretty profitable back 40 years back, right? During the price stability, packs of the 70s and early 80s. and he was his long life passion. But after the coffee pack broke in the late 80s, and then the price swings in the 90s, coffee started to become a really hard business to make it sustainable. And 10 years ago, we decided to start to look for options of exporting our coffee directly, because before that we would sell it just like any other grower, be them small or large, to a private exporter, to the FNC, to a co-op, whoever was basically paying the base price back then. And Colombia, the price transparency in Colombia is pretty broad for commodity. So nobody, I mean, the price, the C market and the exchange rate is very easily translated into a parchment price here locally. But it swings and moves every day with the exchange rate and with the C market. So and by 2009, we'd had basically 10 years of both low prices, only a couple of upticks. And we were really struggling to think of our growing business as something sustainable. And we, as large growers, we could sustain our business through hard years with financing, etc. But for a smaller, medium-sized grower, this volatility completely changes the way that they can look at their farm and their business and their lives. So we decided to start thinking about exporting coffee. We were exporting our own coffee. We had this vague idea of what specialty was about. Back then, when we didn't really know how to cup, we just had this idea that there was this world of specialty was looking for more traceability, that was looking for, in that time, state coffees. So we decided to start a pilot, start making phone calls, sending samples, cold calling people, and kind of really understanding how the business worked. I'm kind of glad that we started in 2009, 2010 instead of today, because you go to SEA now and just the world has become so much more connected, and there's a lot of people exporting directly, trying to build those relationships. And back 10 years ago, there was still a lot of noise, but it was a lot easier to start off, to get people's attention, tell them, hey, we're doing this back in Colombia, hear us out, here as a sample. So we were able to start those relationships, understand really where our coffee was at that point in our farms, what quality we had. Obviously, we started to learn how to cup, learn how to select lots, and really understand which coffees that we were producing were specialty, which coffees were just good export commodity coffees. And we started developing relationships with roasters and importers, and really learning the ropes of specialty, kind of slowly but surely. So in 2012, we decided to start our own little roasting and retail operation here, kind of inspired in what we were seeing with the people that we were working, really seeing kind of how they were being able to differentiate themselves with big chains, and with the idea that here in Colombia, the options for specialty were very limited. So definitely all the good coffee, even the export grade coffee, it's all exported in Colombia. So we drink here the worst of the worst, right? We drink all the triage, all the broken beans, vinegar beans, everything. And if you find any premium coffees out there, it's just going to be export grade Excelsos or Supremos. It was very hard at that time to find really something well roasted, fresh, fully traceable, that was tasting amazingly. So we wanted to be able to showcase those coffees that we were exporting to our local community here in Medellin. We started roasting and retailing with a small shop here in Medellin. Also around that time, we started, now that we were being able to export our farm's coffees, we decided to start an allied producer program. So as I was telling you before, well, the problem that we had as large growers was the same that anybody, that was growing coffee at that time or now has, which is, I'm selling to a private buyer or the FNC here. I really don't know where the coffee's ending up. And if I have a good quality, it's really hard for me to find access to, premiums and traceability and transparency programs. So we decided to basically do what we were doing for our farms for small producers throughout Colombia, and started in INSA Cauca with Leo, our coffee director. He's in charge of all of our allied producer program. He had a lot of relationships in Cauca and Huila from back in the day, and we started kind of renewing that, getting to know those coffees, starting that program. And now the Allied Producer Program is actually the biggest part of our company and what we do. We work with about 600 producers throughout Colombia in different areas. We work in Cauca, we work in Huila, we work in Tolima and Antioquia. We work only with specialty, and we source coffees from them and connect them to roasters and importers throughout the world in a very kind of efficient and kind of practical way. We always pay a base premium once we purchase coffees, which would be the equivalent of our 84 blends. And then once the coffees arrive at our warehouse, and they always come separate, even 20 bags, 20 kilos at a time, 100 kilos, 200 kilos. They always get to our warehouse separate from our allied producers. And then from there, we make selections and say, okay, these ones are micro lot level qualities. These ones are higher end blends. These are 84 blends, etc. We start building those lots, and then at the end of every harvest cycle, we go back and say, okay, these lots were sold at these FOB prices, and we go back and pay a second premium to every producer that provided coffee to programs that were above an 84. So it's a two premium system that works pretty well. It's like we like that everybody, even if a neighbor can get more money than his neighbor because the quality was higher, so be it. I mean, we believe that everybody should get what they're producing, the level of quality they're producing, the volume they're producing. And now it's the biggest part of what we do. Our roasting and retail is also very important. It's grown. We now have 4 shops, soon to be 5 in December.
Oh, wow.
Which opening a shop at this time of year or this year is really scary, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, our main business is exporting green coffee, and it's provided us with a lot of capacities also as a roaster, because it helps us source. If we were just a roaster, it would have been possible to really reach out to the sourcing channels that we have for our exporting business. So it provides us with great coffees for our roasting and our retail. So at the end, everything has kind of a synergy within, and we still produce. We're still producing coffee in our farms. We've reduced a lot the area under production. Basically, anything that can't really produce true specialty, it's been taken out of production, and we're focusing on the higher elevation parts of the farms, changing varieties and doing a lot of stuff to be able to increase the quality of our farms.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the summary.
Wow. You have grown a lot. I mean, because when I was there, you had your one cafe in Medellin there, and you'd really had only just started to do your sort
Yeah,
of.
I think you probably purchased one of the initial Allied Producer Program coffees that we did with Ruben in Caicedo. I still remember, actually, we cupped at our cafe. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remembered,
I do.
because we weren't able to go to our lab for some reason, so we cupped at our cafe. And we topped a Bourbon from Ruben that we were looking at. So yeah, those were the early days. Those were probably some of the best, some of the first lots that we exported that were not from our farms. So
Wow.
yeah, you're there at the beginning.
I feel honored. That's great.
Yeah, no.
And good memory too. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I do remember cupping at the cafe and getting swept away with the sort of romance of being at Origin and Medellin, and your cafe is beautiful, and you know
Yeah,
yeah,
Medellin's a nice town. Medellin is
yeah.
a nice town.
Oh, it is.
People don't really know it, or they know it. They know it for our history, but Medellin is such a nice town. The weather is amazing. Obviously, we still have a lot of issues to solve, but it's just a really nice town, really safe, and good food, good coffee,
Mm. Oh,
good
yeah,
vibes.
it really is.
Yeah.
And so, let's start with the farms. How many farms do you have in your family?
Well, so it depends how you kind of separate them, because it's most of our farms are together, and they distribute to one. Everything gets processed in one mill.
The Santa Barbara.
Yeah, the Santa Barbara coffees all go down to our wet mill, which is called La Joyería, but we do select and separate lots from the different parts of the farm. One is Loma Verde, which is kind of our main farm, La Francia, Agualinda, and La Camelia. Those 4 farms deliver coffees to La Joyería, and then we have La Palma, which has an independent mill, and Veracruz. So at the end, it would be 7 farms, but really 3 wet mills. So the main farm in Santa Barbara all develops the one wet mill.
Right. And so where are your cafes now? Are they all in Medellin, or do you spread out?
Yeah, they're all in Medellin. I mean, I can't still think of how to manage cafes in another city. And we want to stay. We don't really have any big growing plans. We just kind of go with the flow and open cafes when we find a location that we love and that we think will fit into the cafe family. But we're not out with a plan of opening a cafe every year or anything. But yeah, we have 2 cafes. One which is the one that you visited. Actually, that cafe is now larger. It has a second floor to it, and that's still our main cafe. We have one actually very close by, but it's a completely different kind of vibe neighborhood. So the one that you visited, it's in kind of where a lot of the restaurants and more tourist area is. But the other one is a lot more local. So we have in our main shop, we have about 40% of our crowd is tourists and foreigners. Well, not now because of the pandemic, but normally.
Yeah.
The other shop is much more locals, but it's close by. It's only like 4 or 5 blocks away. And we have the one small shop in the airport, and we're opening a new shop in a more residential area, about 10 minutes away from our other shops. But Medellin is still a pretty small city, so it's not. They're not really that far away.
I mean, it's a large population, though, right? How?
Yeah, it's 3.5 million. But it sounds larger than it is. Everything's very concentrated in the valley.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of neighborhoods where most of this sort of consumption would be focused on in terms for like a higher end cafe. But yeah, I mean it's a large city, but it's small in its soul.
Something just happened to your audio. Did you unplug accidentally?
No, can you hear me there?
Yeah.
Well, that's as good of a place to stop a podcast as any. Will we get our sound back? I don't know. You'll have to wait until part 2. We will release part 2 of the podcast when we start roasting the second lot, so expect a couple of weeks. Can you hold on that long? I hope so. Don't hold your breath. We'll be right back.